Hey everyone, welcome to the Freedom to Flourish podcast. I'm Dr. Joel Miller here with Dr. Tim Augustiniak. Today we're talking about what are the three things that if 90% of people in America did these things, the majority of their health issues would significantly improve. Okay, so what we're getting at is basically what are the keys to health that if we focus on these things, not only would your health improve, but a lot of the things that you deal with every day, a lot of the common health issues would go away. What are the things that are kind of the low-hanging fruit, if you will, when it comes to health? And so we're gonna get into these things and go back and forth on some of these things. So, Dr. Tim, good morning, and I'm happy to be here with you. How's it going today?
Good morning. I'm happy to be here too. We were kind of tossing and turning about what sort of episode we were going to do today because we've just talked about so many things. But I think this will probably give us a good opportunity to just chat about what things we, each of us, think are just most important for being healthy. I know we've got a lot of different takes on things, and we've got a lot of similar takes on things. And so to hear a couple different ideas from both of us, I think will be really, really good. So then that way people can sort of focus a bit more aggressively in certain areas as opposed to areas that maybe aren't as important, we'll say. So it's going to be a good one, I think. I think a lot of our episodes end up being a lot of underlying biochemistry, and they get to be a little too deep. And so some patients who want more of a practical surface level explanation of how to treat things and how to fix problems, that would make a whole lot more sense for them, to just, have a more basic level thing to understand versus what we end up getting into. It's just so deep that we have some people that enjoy it because they just really get hardcore into the health stuff. But I think this one will kind of bring us back down to earth when it comes to helping just about everybody with our episodes.
Yeah, totally. And we see a lot of people in our offices that they've had a lot of chronic issues going on for a long time. Like when I mention, hey, what are the things that 90% of people can do to see maximal improvement? Well, there's like 10% group that we kind of generalize that 10% group. I mean, they can eat perfect, they can do all the right things, but they still deal with some pretty significant health issues. And that's, of course, where we can jump in with the muscle testing and really work to get to the bottom of those things and figure out. A lot of times there's very specific solutions for each person there. But at the same time, we see a lot of people that I know in my office, Dr. Tim, some of the things we'll talk about today is like, with nutrition, for example. We talk about that all the time in the office. And if every person, I would argue, if every person really spent time learning about nutrition, but then also applying it and being disciplined with things, I think that people would see that their health just jumps significantly. And so those are kind of some, as you might say, kind of the basics that I'm hopeful that we can get into really well today. So, yeah. Dr. Tim, let's kind of jump into things. So we actually really haven't talked about this amongst at least ourselves, but I'm sure we'll have very similar thoughts and beliefs here. So let's kind of jump into things. So the top three things for me, these are not the only things, but I would say these are the top things. Number one, I would say, is nutrition. Number two, I would say, is movement. And then number three, I would say, is the mind and our thoughts and that kind of thing. Dr. Tim, do you have three off the top of your head? And then we'll kind of jump into things together.
The three things that I think are best for, I guess, long-term health and being the healthiest you can possibly be is managing stress, managing inflammation, and then managing sleep.
I love it. Okay. These are all interwoven together, but
100%. That's the thing is it's like, well, I mean, to, I guess, give us some credit. I mean, at least with mine, I would argue that covers just about everything. Yeah. So maybe not. Maybe we need to be a bit more practical with things, or maybe I need to be more practical with things. And like, okay, so how do you manage stress? How do you manage sleep? How do you manage, like, what even is managing inflammation?
No, this is this is good.
Yeah,
This is good.
maybe my thoughts will evolve as we go.
That's good. This is good. We're going to talk about similar things, I think, but it's going to be from different perspectives and angles, which is great. So I think sometimes one of the cool things about us and doing this podcast together is that we have sometimes different thought pathways that maybe start at one place and kind of end in the same place or the same area, but how we get there can be different, and that's beautiful. It's beautiful. So let's kind of jump in maybe with number one. So managing stress, Dr. Tim, how would you break that down a little bit for us?
Well, we need to talk about the different kinds of stress if we're going to get into that.
Yep.
There's physical, emotional, chemical drivers of stress.
Yep.
And most people just jump to the emotional stuff and they go, well, work's stressful, my family,
Yep.
My mother-in-law or my kids or whatever it is. There's just emotional stressors or family life stressors. When in all reality, quite honestly, in my opinion, those aren't the biggest things that are going to influence stress as a whole. Yeah, they'll make you feel stressed, and they're the things that you can consciously think of that, make you, quote, stressed. However, stress is more than just your emotions. Stress is your biochemistry and things that contribute to it. So basically anything that's going to drive cortisol production or anything that's going to keep you from detoxifying cortisol is going to drive stress underlying. And so pain or, being in poor physical shape, that will drive stress significantly, especially if, say you're super sedentary and you go and you do a bunch of lawn work or you help somebody move and you're just working your body like crazy. Well, if your body's not used to moving like that and you just go to, moving a lot of stuff and driving a lot of stress and cortisol in your system, if you don't clear that out properly, heart rate's going to go up, blood pressure is going to go up, and your heart rate variability is going to be not great. And so as a whole, your body's going to be pretty stressed and heart rate's going to be pretty high for a while following that. And so that's on the list. And then as far as it goes for chemical drivers of stress, anything that's going to keep the liver from detoxifying stress. So, hormone issues, too much insulin, too much cortisol, not replenishing nutrients there to help detoxify things. And so when it comes to managing stress as a whole, of course, basically from the, I guess, traditional standpoint of putting things in perspective, maybe some meditation or talking things out with your partner or anything like that is going to be super beneficial to help cope with the emotional stress and all that stuff that goes on with life. I think if somebody is totally fine, chemical stress and physical stress and all those things, if you have very, I guess, poor coping mechanisms for life, because life isn't exactly this easy, awesome, smooth boat that we're on together. Life has its bumps. There's a lot of stuff that goes on that work gets in the way, family gets in the way, life, just everything gets in the way. And so you're going to have some stress there. And so coping appropriately is going to be super, super important.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, how do you do that? And to your point, movement, physical activity, things like that are super beneficial, because at its root, what is stress? Stress is your body producing cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine, stress hormones for the sake of, quote, survival. Well, if your kids are getting on your nerves or something like that, or if your husband's getting on your nerves or whatever, somebody in your life is driving you up a wall, or, your parents are driving you crazy, whatever it is, that's not necessarily something that should get you feeling like you need to fight or flight, run away from danger or fight it. But as a survival mechanism, anytime we have confrontation, our bodies are designed to increase stress so then that way we can survive. And finding ways to cope with that and put those stress hormones to good use at the very least is super beneficial. So if you are having a stressful day and doing some steady state cardio to help work that cortisol out, or even doing some sort of weight training is absolutely great for that. But on the other side of it, with underlying chemical drivers of stress, nutrition is incredibly important. Supplementation is incredibly important. And you kind of have to go at it from both angles, support things like methylated B vitamins and methylation pathway, or demethylation pathway, different aspects of that to help prepackaged cortisol and other hormones for detoxification in the liver through other pathways. All those things, very, very important when it comes to managing stress. But I guess from a at-home perspective, if we're really trying to narrow it down as specifically as possible, supplementation, movement, and then communication, and whatever that means for you. If it's talking with your husband or your wife on stuff, if it's going to some sort of therapy, whatever it is, if you have significant stress and it's something that you need to share with somebody, finding ways to do that are healthy.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Tim, I'm going to toss this up here and see how this goes here. I love the practical side of things. And when I talk with patients in the office, they always love the practical side of things too, of course. And so when it comes to those few things you mentioned, like, okay, we're managing stress, some of the take homes here that people can easily apply. You mentioned supplements, you mentioned movement, you mentioned communication. What are maybe some different supplements that you might kind of suggest that people can kind of look into or consider or try? And then what about movement? What are some things that you kind of see that when people do this movement every day, their stress is better, or once a week, or that like? And then communication wise, you mentioned a couple of things there, of just communicating more and that kind of thing. Do you have any other practical kind of in-depth thoughts on that topic as well?
It's hard to say. I mean, I don't have a whole lot that comes to the top of my mind right now. I guess
the communication.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's you chat with your friends that you can trust. You chat with your spouse who you can trust. You chat with people that are in your life that care about you and help get things off your chest. And at the very least, either help you. Well, here's a question I ask my wife sometimes. Mm-hmm. Do you want me to help you fix the problem, or do you just want me to hear you right now?
For sure.
And we do a good job, I think, of making sure that we're perceptive of what the other person's looking for, because sometimes you just need to vent. You just need to kind of be a Debbie Downer and get stuff off your chest, and then just be good. Other times it's something that you're struggling with that maybe you're looking for a different perspective to help solve some sort of problem.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then, bouncing that off of somebody else who has a different perspective, just outside looking in, maybe different life experience, things like that, to help you come up with solutions, I think that's great too. So that's kind of the means of which we go about stuff. There are, some people, they like to go to therapy and all that stuff, and that's great too. That's totally fine. That's not for me. But I would argue that I don't know. I'm kind of a happy-go-lucky kind of guy. I do get kind of stressed out about stuff, but it's nothing that taking a little bit of time for my own leisure will not solve.
Yeah, it'll work it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. All right. How about the supplements? Any top, general recommendations for like, hey, how can I help with stress? Just looking at some supplements.
If we're looking at the hormone detox side of things like glutathione, artichoke extract, P5P, or vitamin B6 in its activated form, those are all really great options. But if you're looking at it from just like the stress management standpoint, using herbs, adaptogenic herbs like ashwagandha, rhodiola, holy basil, those are going to be super beneficial to help modulate your body's stress response and help you cope better with that. They can be really good at basically balancing your autonomic nervous system. On top of that, there are some other things that can be useful to support things like GABA, which is your calming neurotransmitter, which can calm anxiety and therefore help stress. That's where things like, if you look at different, sleep aid teas, they'll contain herbs like passion flower, valerian root, a lot of times L-theanine, stuff like that. And so those are all on the list of herbs that will help basically push the precursor glutamate, which is super excitatory, into its active form of GABA, which calms down excess neurologic signals in our brain and therefore helps you relax. And so those are really, really good for that stuff. So it all depends on really what you're looking for. Yeah. If you just want something that'll help you weather the storm, then rhodiola, ashwagandha, passion flower, things like that are really good. If you're looking to just overall improve metabolic health and go at it from the hormone detoxification standpoint, the artichoke, glutathione, other things are going to be more beneficial.
Yep. Very good. All right. And then with movement, I'll kind of jump into this one as well, but any specific things that you recommend movement wise, specific habits, types of workouts, stretching, what's kind of your kind of general baseline recommendation for the average Joe?
Regardless of whether you consider yourself an average Joe or not, I think that everybody has the ability to gather data on themselves. And so what I mean by that, you have the ability to log how you're feeling, how you're doing, how certain activities are affecting your body, and pay attention to that. And so when it comes to stress, that is something that in the long term can drive stress, but it's also something that momentarily, say you are super stressed out, your adrenals are kind of in the toilet, you're just drained as all get out. Hardcore, circuit training or CrossFit or intense weightlifting, things like that can cause your body to get absolutely depleted.
Yeah.
It requires stress hormones and it requires healthy adrenals and a healthy nervous system to be able to do that stuff. If you are not at that point, you're going to feel super depleted and super tired and maybe even start yawning, all of those things during your workouts. If that is something that you notice, you're going to be more in the category of somebody who should do lighter aerobic movement. That's more parasympathetic or more calming for your nervous system and adrenals. So that is going to be things like zone 2 cardio, walking, biking, hopping on the elliptical, rower, things like that, light weight training. All those things are good. The rule of thumb with that is if you feel good when you get done exercising, then you did good. If you feel really tired and really depleted, you did not. And so that just means that you did too much. And so wherever you fall with that, say you do a hard circuit or you are lifting all kinds of heavy weights and you feel really good after, all the power to you. Go for it. It's all a factor of how you're feeling with stuff.
Yep. Love it. Cool.
I guess what's your take on that?
Yeah. So I think all those things are great. I mean, as far as, most people, when they think of movement and exercise, which I don't know if people have gathered this, but a lot of times I like to use the word movement. I don't like to use the word exercise because the idea of exercise is we're training the cardiovascular system, we're getting the heart rate up, all those things. Those are not bad things. Those are important things. But even more important is just moving the body. And so when you move the body, you don't have to be running. You don't have to be doing intense lifting workouts and things like that. At the minimum, with movement, one of the best things, one of the healthiest things that people can do is walking. And so it's one of the things that, like, you look at other countries and quote unquote, like third world countries, they don't have a lot of the technology and advanced society and all the things that we have today. And they'll literally walk miles and miles and miles. And they'll be out in the fields, with the cattle and all these things for years and years, up into their 90s. And these people all live into their 90s. A lot of them live into their hundreds and their low hundreds. And I think a lot of that has to do with just their active lifestyle. None of them are overweight because they're constantly moving. Not that they're necessarily burning a ton of calories, but I think that the movement in general can help with lymphatic flow. I think it can help kind of rehab and nourish our nervous system. And when you do those things together, you detox better, your metabolism and your hormones improve, and overall you're just a lot healthier. So I think in addition to what you said, avoiding overtraining, pay attention to how you feel during the workout and after the workout. If you're exhausted, then you push it too hard. And sometimes you don't need to work out every day. Sometimes you need to rest for a day or two to kind of build your system back up, as well as, making sure you have good nutrition. But on top of that, the zone 2 cardio, it can be extremely helpful as well. And then, of course, if you're really trying to push it, at a high level, you're going to increase that intensity. But as a baseline, what I find is that if people will walk more, and we'll talk about what that looks like, but if people walk more, I find that their health just improves in all areas. And so, again, that's 90% of people. So in walking more, what I generally recommend is try to walk for 45 minutes to an hour a day. So that might be a 20-minute walk here, 20-minute walk here. It might be a good 40-minute walk. But the more that you can kind of do that, and preferably out in nature, I think people generally do a lot better with things. So there's benefits there, again, with our lymphatic system. I think there's benefits just with our nervous system and how supportive that can be. I think there's benefits mentally as well, just to, again, if you're outside, things like that, I think that can be super helpful. Just to touch a little bit more on that lymphatic component, when we move, every time we contract a muscle, it pushes the lymphatic fluid back up towards our circulation system. And once pushed back up to our circulation system, it then goes into the blood to be detoxed through the liver and the kidneys. And so in our lymphatic system, we have a lot of proteins, we have a lot of fats, and we also have a lot of toxins. And so whenever we move, we're basically helping to cleanse our system by moving the fluid, and it goes back through the liver, back through the kidneys, and gets detoxed out. And again, I just find that a lot of people do so much better just across the board with their health, their hormones, metabolism, brain function, overall, just purity of their blood and things like that when they're walking more. So a lot of times people will recommend steps. If you can hit 8,000, 10,000 steps a day, that's amazing. If you can do more than that, 15,000, 20, that's awesome. But I just, again, recommend just get out and move more. If you notice that you're walking more, let's say you're walking 45 minutes a day, you do that for a week. See how you feel. I bet you your inflammation is going to be lower. I bet you that your mind is going to be clear. Your sleep's probably going to be better. Your mood is going to be more balanced. So that's all that I would add to what you had mentioned, Dr. Tim, on the movement.
I've got a follow-up question for you on that.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
So you talk about a lot of people will just walk. Say a patient comes in and one of their primary concerns is losing weight. Do you think that walking is enough to encourage weight loss?
So I think it's a really good foundational piece that should be added in. But I don't think it's by any means we should place all our eggs in that basket. I've had probably the best improvements with weight loss that I've had has been through nutrition and supplementation. All of that to support detoxing the liver, healing the gut, and overall improving thyroid health. I share this story all the time with patients, but I have a couple sisters that I'll see here in the office, and one of them lost, I think, 60 pounds, came in at 220 and is now about 160, maybe 170. So about 50 to 60 pounds. And then the other sister lost, I think, 20 to 30 pounds. And I was just typing some notes as I was talking with them. And I was like, oh my word. I said, have I ever talked about exercise or movement with you guys? And they're kind of looking around, they're like, kind of looking for an answer. And they're like, no. And I was like, oh my word, we haven't even talked about exercise or movement. I literally haven't talked about it with them. I haven't told them do this exercise routine. I haven't told them go to the gym more. I haven't told them walk. And they weren't people at that time that were really working out much. They might go on walks occasionally, but they really weren't doing much. And so they lost all that weight just from really good nutrition and getting the hormones and everything balanced. So long story long, Dr. Tim, to share that story. I think that the walking in and of itself is really good and really supportive, but I don't think that it's only going to be as helpful as if you're being consistent with the other things as well.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Any thoughts to add? What kinds of things are you sharing with your patients as well?
I think walking's great, but a lot of people I will ask, one of their primary goals is losing weight, and then they've got all the stress in their life and they're really not prioritizing their health and their adrenals in that point, which I always argue, if one of your goals is losing weight, you have to take time for yourself and let your body rest.
Yeah.
But I'll ask, so what's your exercise habits like? And they'll say, I exercise a lot. Okay, well, what's your main activity? Well, I walk. Well, what are you walking on an incline, on a treadmill and sweating? Well, no, I just walk around a lot at work or something like that.
Yeah.
And I really don't think that getting, to your, maybe this is I guess a contrary opinion to what you have expressed, but I personally do not think 10, 20,000 steps a day. I mean, maybe 20,000, but 10,000 steps a day. I don't think that even doing 10,000 steps a day, if one of your main goals is to lose weight and you have poor adrenal health and you've got some metabolic issues and some other inflammatory things going on, I mean, you're not going to lose weight. I've had a lot of people where they're like, I walk and I'm not losing weight.
Yeah.
And it's those patients that it gets really tough with weight loss, they'll even start exercising and doing weight training and cardio and just all these things. And even still, they're like, man, I still can't lose weight. And it's because they've got significant underlying metabolic issues and inflammatory issues and detox issues and all of the above. And so if overall health and longevity are part of your goals, especially with women and being healthy through menopause and all that, you need to get some weight on your back, on your spine, compressive load. So then that way you can build bone as well as muscle, because
Yeah.
bone is just as important as muscle, and walking does not get that.
Yeah.
If there's any sort of trade-off to be had later on in life, quite honestly, I know walking's the default, but this is going to sound funny, but I'd rather your grandma be in a squat rack than walking, 10,000 steps a day.
Yeah.
I think the benefits that are to be had from, well, the cardio standpoint of lifting heavy weights, but also the building of bone and preserving bone mineral density,
Yep.
greatly reduces mortality rates. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, what are the stats on that? If you're over the age of 60, I think if you have, or maybe it was over 70, 75, something like that. Regardless, there's some sort of stat, I forget exactly what it is, but once you're basically elderly, if you have a hip fracture, the chance of you dying in the next 3 years goes up by like 90+%.
Yeah, it's high.
You're 90% likely to not make it the next 3 years.
Yeah.
And so if you can do things to prevent that later on in life, and I mean, the groundwork is laid previously. And so when it comes to exercise for overall health, I'm more of a fan of weight training than I am just strictly cardio. I mean, it's important, but if you're to trade one off versus the other, I think weights are more important.
Yeah, no, those are a lot of good points, and there's a lot of different, I think there's a lot of different situations and scenarios too, that we're kind of layering into some of these things. But yeah, I agree. I think there's massive benefits with weight load and muscle mass. I think that I had heard this at one point. I'd have to go back and look at the study, but I believe it was like there was one indicator, like physically, metabolically, that equaled longevity of life, and that was muscle mass. And you don't get the muscle mass just by walking. And so the strength training is absolutely huge. But in my perspective and kind of approaching part of this, I'm thinking about the masses, and the majority of people, they don't move at all. And so, in a perfect situation with weight loss, right? We're balancing the hormones, we're eating healthy nutrition, and then also we're moving our body. I would argue in a low aerobic state, such as walking, but then also we're lifting weights because of the combination of things. So, again, in a perfect situation, but nonetheless, I think there's a lot of great points there. So that's awesome. All right.
Yeah, I feel like we could kind of argue both sides of that coin pretty
like which ones.
Both things are beneficial. I don't think one person should be doing one or the other.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I think we're kind of getting caught in some of the weeds a little bit, but both are helpful. Both can be life changing. Best case scenario, you're doing both together. Again, along with all the other different factors of health. And there's massive benefits, I think, definitely for both. All right. Dr. Tim, let's see. Looking at the clock here, and then also the other things to chat about. So one of the things I want to chat about was nutrition. We've talked about this all the time. So I want to hit a couple high points there. And then we can kind of go into, I know you talked about inflammation, and we can talk about that a little bit. I mentioned the mind. I want to mention a couple of things there. And then what was the third thing, Dr. Tim, you mentioned again?
Sorry, what was that?
The third thing. So you mentioned managing stress.
Sleep.
Yes, sleep was the third thing. That's right. So yeah, we can touch on that for a bit here, but we gotta keep moving. So does that sound all right to you, Dr. Tim? We kind of go through the order there.
Great.
That's good.
I think we've got
some
good stuff already.
Totally. Yep. So yeah, we've touched on these things a ton. So don't want to beat a dead horse here, but nutrition wise, I think obviously we talk about eating healthy. Okay, well, what does that look like, and what's the best diet for me? So in general, I would say here's like the basic principles that if people followed these things, like the majority of people would be so much healthier. So number one, it's eat whole foods, right? So stop eating the processed stuff and eat whole foods. Anything that has like a one ingredient list on it, like a banana, for example, is a banana. Okay, so it's my favorite.
Do you see an ingredient list on a banana, Dr.
You don't
Joel?
see an ingredient list on there, but we all know that it's one ingredient in that thing. And so if you can structure your nutrition in that way, I think that's going to be amazing for you. I think sometimes this mental switch can be really helpful for people. It's not just that you want to eat good foods because there's good nutrients, which obviously people think about those things. But I think the mental switch is this: it's you want to avoid the bad stuff because the bad stuff is going to stress your system more and cause more problems. So it's almost like if you have the option between fasting and eating a meal from McDonald's that's full of seed oils and processed flour and refined flour and GMO ingredients and things like this, I would recommend fasting, right? So that's kind of the thought process. Obviously, everybody's situation is a little different, but that's kind of the thought process. So avoiding these foods can be so much more helpful than actually getting the right nutrients. And again, it's not a perfect conversation here with this. These aren't perfect points, but I'm hopeful that my point is kind of getting across. So yes, you want to know what foods are good. You want to eat those things, but you also want to know what foods are bad, and you want to avoid those things really well. So that's one with nutrition. Number two, I'd say most people need to eat more protein and healthy fats. Protein needs to be animal-based proteins, things like chicken, beef, turkey, eggs, fish, things like that. And then the fats we need in our nutrition is like things like grass-fed butter. I think if every person, ate roughly 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of grass-fed butter a day, I think people would notice they just feel a lot better. And then other fats too, like olive oil, is amazing. So that's kind of the gist with nutrition. I think maybe the last little point that I'll add in this, Dr. Tim, before we kind of keep moving forward here, is fasting. Fasting is a golden little nugget, I think, that a lot of people miss out on because either they're not. Honestly, I think a lot of people are addicted to food, and I think fasting is a great way to give your body a break. And also to kind of discipline your body in that way. So that's all that I would say on nutrition. Dr. Tim, any couple of pieces to add? Otherwise, we can jump into more of your second point, if there's anything you had to add with the second point on managing inflammation.
The only thing that I would add, I would argue, I'm really not a fan of fasting, if I'm being honest.
Really?
Really.
I don't know if I've heard that from you.
Yeah, I dislike fasting quite a bit because people don't know how to do it in moderation. Is the unfortunate part. And so, say somebody has, higher blood sugar, some metabolic issues, they're a little overweight, they will start fasting and they'll never stop. And it goes from way too high blood sugar and spending too much time on that end, and then they'll do it for like a year or two, and along that time they'll get to a good place, and then all of a sudden they feel like garbage.
Yeah.
And it is, I would say it's much more straightforward to get back to baseline from higher blood sugar than it is to heal the adrenals when you spend too much time at the low end and you drive your adrenals into the ground. The adrenals do not heal overnight. And so it can be a little bit of a uphill battle. So I don't necessarily recommend fasting. I think that the stress hormone production as a whole, especially with how busy most people's lives are and the amount of stress that they drive anyway, is just it's not a worthy trade-off.
Yeah.
I think the best thing you can do is, like you said, eat whole foods, read labels, mitigate sugars, all that stuff, and just eat good, animal proteins and fats, good veggies and fruits, all that. 3 meals a day, 5 hours apart. And if you do that, blood sugar is going to normalize and you're going to feel really good. I really don't see any need to do fasting, because that would imply that blood sugar is a mess and that you're spending too much time at high blood sugar. Some people argue that it's great for mental clarity and all these things because insulin can cause issues with dopamine and serotonin and cause brain fog and all the things. However, doesn't mean you have to not eat food to do that. There's other ways to do that doesn't mess with your adrenals. So anyway, just a little side note.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Anyway, we need to talk about this more, but let's keep moving because we still have some other things we need to cover.
Sleep. So with sleep, all in all, I mean, figure out how much sleep you need. Some people say that too much sleep, they feel more tired. Not enough sleep, they feel tired. Somewhere around that 7 to 9 hour range is where most people fall. And I think good sleep hygiene is very important. So If you stay up too late and you doom scroll, you're on your phone with all your blue light and all that stuff, you're not going to sleep great. However, if you can turn all the technology off, maybe read a book with some warm, red lighting, you're probably going to sleep a whole lot better. And so I would encourage everybody to ditch the screens, ditch all the technology, all those things before bedtime. Yep. Read a book, and that will help improve your sleep. Sleep is very important to, 1, regenerate your body, 2, regulate your rhythm with your cortisol, so it helps manage your stress throughout the day, helps your body heal. I mean, there's all kinds of things that go on during sleep that's very, very, very important. And so having good sleep is going to help mitigate stress significantly. As a whole, I mean, feeling good, sleeping good, being rested, overall, you're going to be healthier, because then you'll have the energy and the motivation to do other good things for your health, like exercise, cook, all of those things.
I love it. Love it. Last thing on my end here is the mind. So this one's kind of an interesting topic because it's can be sometimes hard to put like boundaries on this or kind of box this thing in. But essentially with the mind, the biggest thing I would say is like we want to take our thoughts captive, right? Sometimes we can have thoughts that come into our head. Sometimes they can be negative thoughts towards ourselves. They can be negative thoughts towards other people. And we want to take those things captive and basically analyze them for what they are. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? We want to have thoughts that are set on things that are good, things that are peaceful, things that are worthy to be thought of. And so, again, that includes thoughts we're thinking about our life, ourself, thoughts we're thinking about other people, thoughts we're thinking about our surroundings, our situation, and things like that. And I think sometimes we can take the best supplements. I think sometimes people can eat the best foods, they can work out the best, but they always live in a state of shame or guilt. And it's like you've got to find peace. And I think when our mind is really balanced, like I've seen people that, I'll compare and contrast a little bit here. I've seen some people that their mind is amazing. I mean, so healthy, positive, always seeking to help other people. They're not just focused on themselves all the time, but they're trying to support and love other people and be selfless in those things. And a lot of times I find those people have, very little health issues. And I'm just convinced that it's because the thoughts that we think have different frequencies and things that impact the rest of our system. And, there's a lot of like research and books and stuff on that topic. But at the same time, I've also seen people that they think the best, but like they're super inflamed because they eat a bunch of seed oils all the time when they go out to eat. And so, there's obviously a balance with everything we're talking about, but I think when our thoughts are right, I think that's going to also just support our body and make up for a lot of other weak areas. If we can have really good kind of mental health and thoughts as well. So, Dr. Tim, that's all I got on the mind. Are there any other anything else we want to mention here before we wrap this up? I know we're in a little bit of a hurry here.
I think that all sounds good. Happy thoughts, positive thoughts go a long way. So if you're doing that along with all the other things that we talked about, you're going to be healthier.
Love it. Love it. All right, let's wrap up. I'm Dr. Joel Miller. The practice here is Freedom Health and Wellness in Flower Mound, Texas, in the Dallas, Texas area. You can find me online at drjoelmiller.com or on Instagram. Just look up Dr. Joel Miller. If you guys have any thoughts or questions, feel free to visit the website or the social media and shoot us a message. The office number is on the website. You can give us a call or shoot us a text on there, and we'd be happy to help you or support you in any way we can, whether that's just kind of pointing you in the right direction or if you're needing more in-depth support on things. Dr. Tim, tell us about how people can find you.
My name is Dr. Tim Augustiniak. I practice here in Bentonville, Arkansas at Flourish Functional Wellness Center. If you want to find me online, my website is draugustiniak.com. That's draugustiniak.com. And if you go to the homepage of the website, you'll see contact info as well as all the links to the socials. So if you guys need anything, please reach out. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And we hope to hear from you and have you guys listen to the next one.